Imagine waking up before the world has even whispered its first breath. The city outside still sleeps. Streetlights hum, shadows stretch across empty roads, and there's a strange stillness in the air, the kind of silence that feels almost sacred. This is the hour when billionaires move. Not in boardrooms, not on stages, not surrounded by cameras or journalists, but in the quiet, alone. While most people hit snooze, they've already claimed the part of the day no one else touches, the early morning. And here's the secret. The routines they keep in these hours are rarely spoken about. They're not the glossy, Instagram-ready morning rituals you see in productivity books or TikTok montages. They're hidden, private, and deeply intentional. We're told 1,000 myths about what successful people do in the morning. Some say it's about drinking green juice. Others preach cold plunges, 10-step journaling rituals, or reading for an hour before touching your phone. But the truth is simpler, quieter, and more profound. The morning routines of billionaires are not about showing off discipline. They are about protecting clarity, about training the mind before the day trains you, about controlling the invisible forces of focus, psychology, and momentum. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus once said, "First say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do." That is the essence of a billionaire's morning. The invisible architecture of identity, laid brick by brick, long before emails and meetings invade. And today, we're going to step inside those hidden routines. We'll uncover the rituals billionaires practice but rarely discuss. We'll look at the science of why mornings matter, the ancient wisdom that predicted these habits centuries ago, and the practical steps you can take to rebuild your own mornings into a fortress of success. So, as you listen, picture this not as a lecture, but as a cinematic journey. A walk through history, science, and psychology. By the end, you won't just know what billionaires do in the morning. You'll know how to craft a routine that rewires your brain, reclaims your time, and reshapes your future. Most people live 90% of their lives on autopilot, chasing goals that aren't even theirs. But what if you could rewire your mind like Edison, Carnegie, or Ford? What if you could unlock the hidden power of your thoughts, the way the greatest minds in history did? Welcome to Wisdom Foundry, the place where timeless philosophy meets modern neuroscience, and motivation becomes transformation. Every day, we decode the secrets of success, using ancient wisdom, psychology, and science to help you break free of fear, spark massive action, and build a life by design. So if you're ready to stop living in fear, tap into your highest self, and build unstoppable momentum. Speaking Head, subscribe to Wisdom Foundry now. Your future is waiting. The myth of the morning routine. If you type morning routine into YouTube right now, you'll see glossy montages of influencers making matcha, lighting candles, journaling by a window, and practicing yoga in designer workout gear. They title it things like The Perfect Morning Routine for Success, or 5 Habits to Start Your Day Like a Millionaire. But here's the problem. Billionaires aren't doing that. Their mornings aren't curated for social media. They aren't rituals designed for aesthetic appeal. They are raw, efficient, and brutally personal. Most people chase routines like trends. They copy someone else's steps and expect the same results. They believe if they meditate for 10 minutes, write in a gratitude journal, and do a cold shower, their lives will transform overnight. But ask yourself this: do you really think Warren Buffett, Jeff Bezos, Oprah Winfrey, or Elon Musk are following the same influencer-approved checklist every morning? Of course not. The truth is, their routines are not about what they do, but about why they do it. Think of mornings like the first move in a chess game. The move itself doesn't win the match, but it sets the tone. It dictates the flow. It either puts you in control, or it leaves you reacting to your opponent's every play. This is where most people lose. They wake up already on defense. Their phone is the alarm, so the first thing they see is a flood of notifications, emails, and news alerts. Their brain goes from zero to chaos in 10 seconds flat. Neuroscientists call this the attentional hijack. Your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for focus and decision-making, is immediately overrun by dopamine-triggering distractions. Instead of deciding the day's direction, you're pulled into a whirlpool of reacting. Now, Compare this to a billionaire's morning. They don't check emails first thing. They don't scroll through news feeds. They design mornings as a buffer between their mind and the world. In psychology, this is called a transition ritual, a set of intentional acts that shift your state of consciousness. Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor and Stoic philosopher, used his mornings to remind himself of his identity. In his meditations, he wrote, "When you arise in the morning, think of what a privilege it is to be alive, to think, to enjoy, to love." That wasn't motivational fluff. It was psychological programming, a way of framing his day before the chaos of empire demanded his attention. Fast forward 2,000 years, and billionaires do the same thing. They don't start the day by reacting. They start by programming. The silent discipline of Howard Schultz. Let me tell you a story. In the 1980s, Howard Schultz, the man who transformed Starbucks into a global empire, used to wake up at 4:30 a.m. every day. But not to check reports or race into meetings. He'd start by walking his dog, brewing coffee, and taking time to think. This was before Starbucks was Starbucks. Before it was the household name it is today. Schultz didn't have millions in the bank. What he had was discipline, and mornings were his foundation. Decades later, Schultz admitted in interviews that those early mornings weren't about coffee rituals or dog walks. They were about control. He knew that once the day began, he'd be pulled in 1,000 directions. But those early hours, they were his. His time to think strategically, prepare mentally, and enter the day with clarity. That's the first lesson. Billionaire mornings are not glamorous. They are intentional. They are built on the idea that whoever owns the morning, owns the day. The science behind morning mastery. Let's ground this in neuroscience. Your brain operates on what's called a circadian rhythm, a natural cycle of wakefulness and rest. Within the first 90 minutes after waking, your brain experiences what scientists call the cortisol awakening response. Cortisol is often misunderstood. We think of it only as a stress hormone. But in the morning, it's your natural wake-up signal. It sharpens alertness, boosts metabolism, and primes your focus. This is the neurological golden window for deep thinking, creative insight, and habit building. If you waste this window by scrolling, you're essentially throwing away your brain's most powerful state of the day. But billionaires? They use this time to their advantage. Some read, some exercise, some journal, some simply think, but they all guard this 90-minute window like treasure. Modern psychology confirms what Napoleon Hill taught nearly a century ago. The starting point of all achievement is desire. And desire is most effectively programmed when your brain is in a state of heightened receptivity, like the early morning. This is why the billionaire morning is less about tasks and more about states. It's not do X, Y, Z. It's enter the state of clarity, focus, and control that allows the rest of the day to follow your lead. Breaking the myth of perfection. Here's something else no one tells you. Billionaire mornings aren't perfect. They're not the same every single day. Steve Jobs was famous for keeping mornings simple. He'd wake up, look in the mirror, and ask himself one question. If today were the last day of my life, would I want to do what I am about to do today? If the answer was no, too many days in a row, he knew something had to change. Notice the difference. He didn't meditate for 30 minutes. He didn't do a 12-step productivity system. He asked one piercing, identity-shaping question. That's it. Perfection isn't the goal. Clarity is. Consistency isn't about never missing a step. It's about never losing the intention behind the step. That's the difference between mimicking influencer routines and embodying a billionaire's morning. The science of early success. Most people think success is about luck. A big break. A chance encounter. A stroke of genius. But neuroscience tells a different story. Success, at its core, is about patterns. The brain, like clay, is shaped by repetition, by the habits we rehearse, especially in the earliest hours of the day. And here's where the billionaire morning routine separates itself from the ordinary. It leverages brain science, not fads. The neuroplasticity window. At the dawn of the day, your brain is in what neuroscientists call a neuroplastic state. Neuroplasticity is your brain's ability to rewire itself, to strengthen certain connections and weaken others. Think of your mind like a fresh snowfall. Every thought, every action you take in the morning leaves tracks. Repeat the same tracks over and over, and they become the dominant pathways. This is why the morning is so dangerous if wasted, and so powerful if mastered. Billionaires understand this instinctively. Whether it's Jeff Bezos, who famously protected his slow, deliberate mornings, or Oprah Winfrey, who starts with meditation and intention setting, the principle is the same. Mornings are when your brain is most open to programming. This isn't about superstition. It's biology. When you wake, your neural networks are like wet cement. The first inputs, your thoughts, your actions, your focus, solidify into patterns that echo throughout the day. That's why starting your morning with social media or chaotic news isn't just a waste of time. It's a neurological betrayal. You're wiring your brain for distraction, stress, and reaction. But start with clarity. You wire your brain for leadership, vision, and composure. Story arc: Jeff Bezos and the puttering secret. Jeff Bezos, one of the richest men on earth, once admitted something shocking. He avoids early morning meetings. In fact, he spends his mornings puttering around the house. On the surface, that sounds lazy, but dig deeper. Bezos understood what science now confirms. Cognitive energy is finite. Your sharpest decisions come when your prefrontal cortex is fresh. That's why he schedules his highest level decisions for the late morning, after he's had time to let his mind ease into the day. This isn't a man being casual. It's a man protecting his neurobiology. By not rushing, by not overloading himself, Bezos was practicing mental conservation. In a way, he was doing what ancient Stoics advised, starting from a calm, unshaken center. Seneca once wrote, "The mind must be given relaxation. It will rise improved and sharper after a little rest." Bezos lives that truth. His slow mornings were not inefficiency. They were optimization. This is where the myth of hustle culture collapses. Billionaires don't win by waking up at 4 a.m. and grinding non-stop. They win by knowing when their brain works best and protecting that energy with sacred routines. The cortisol awakening response and peak states. Let's return to science. In Chapter 1, we mentioned the cortisol awakening response, that natural surge that sharpens your focus in the first 60 to 90 minutes after waking. Pair that with your body's circadian rhythm, and you have a built-in system for peak performance. Andrew Huberman, a neuroscientist at Stanford, explains that the early morning sunlight signals your brain to release cortisol and dopamine in a healthy rhythm. These chemicals don't just wake you up. They prime you for learning, memory, and focus. This is why billionaire morning routines often emphasize three things: light exposure, stepping outside to reset the body clock; movement, not necessarily a full workout, but enough to stimulate blood flow and oxygen to the brain; mental framing, some form of intentional thought, whether journaling, meditation, or strategic reflection. These aren't random hacks. They're grounded in biology, and they explain why billionaires protect mornings like treasure. They're not chasing habits. They're engineering brain states. Oprah Winfrey's centering ritual. Consider Oprah. She doesn't hide her morning practices. She wakes early, walks her dogs, brews espresso, and then sits down for 20 minutes of meditation. Afterward, she reads inspirational texts and writes in her gratitude journal. But notice the psychology here. Oprah's mornings aren't about productivity in the traditional sense. They're about state shaping. Gratitude rewires the brain's default network away from anxiety and toward abundance. Meditation increases alpha brainwaves, linked to creativity and problem solving. And inspirational reading primes her subconscious for growth-oriented thinking. She's not checking tasks off a list. She's calibrating her nervous system. She's stepping into the day as the architect of her mind, not the victim of her schedule. And here's what's fascinating. This matches what modern neuroscience shows us about priming. The idea that the thoughts you expose yourself to early in the day unconsciously guide your perception and decisions for hours afterward. Oprah isn't just being grateful. She's literally rewiring her brain for success every single morning. The billionaire's advantage: not time, but energy. Here's a harsh truth. Billionaires don't have more time than you. They have the same 24 hours. What they master is energy. Energy management is the unspoken core of their routines. And mornings are the central battleground. Tony Schwartz, author of The Power of Full Engagement, explains that human beings don't perform like machines. We don't run best on non-stop effort. We run best on rhythms of energy, bursts of focus followed by renewal. Billionaires master this by designing mornings that replenish, not deplete. They don't wake up and burn their sharpest mental hours on low-value tasks like emails. They spend them on the highest-value work: thinking, strategy, identity formation. This is why so many successful entrepreneurs talk about journaling, reading, or walking in the morning. These aren't extras. They're energy-shaping rituals. Benjamin Franklin's timeless morning question. Long before neuroscience put language to it, Benjamin Franklin practiced the billionaire morning principle. He famously structured his day around one morning question: what good shall I do this day? Every morning, Franklin wrote this question at the top of his planner. Simple, direct, powerful. It wasn't just a reminder. It was a neurological anchor. By asking this question, Franklin activated what psychologists today call the reticular activating system, RAS, the brain's filter that decides what information to notice. By priming his brain with that question, Franklin tuned his perception to opportunities for doing good, for contributing, for making impact. It was 18th century neuroscience in action. This is why billionaires often start with questions instead of answers. Steve Jobs asked his mirror question. Franklin asked his journal. These weren't gimmicks. They were ways of programming the brain's attention filter before the world could hijack it. The hidden psychology of morning identity. Let's step deeper. At its core, the billionaire morning isn't about productivity. It's about identity. Psychologists call this self-concordant goals. Goals that are aligned with who you believe yourself to be. And the morning is the time when identity is most malleable. If you wake and immediately react to the world, you reinforce the identity of a reactor, someone who is controlled by circumstances. But if you wake and begin by shaping your own mind, you reinforce the identity of a creator, a leader, a visionary. Jim Rohn, the mentor of countless entrepreneurs, said it plainly: either you run the day, or the day runs you. The billionaire morning is where you decide which it will be. This is why so many successful people say mornings set the tone. They don't mean it metaphorically. They mean it psychologically. Identity is not discovered. It's practiced. And the practice begins the moment you open your eyes. The billionaire's secret weapon: momentum. Finally, let's talk momentum. Physics teaches us that objects in motion stay in motion. Human behavior works the same way. Start your morning with distraction, and distraction cascades. Start with clarity, and clarity compounds. In psychology, this is known as the Zeigarnik effect, the tendency of unfinished tasks to dominate the mind. If your morning is cluttered with half-completed distractions, your brain carries that residue all day. But if your morning begins with a small, intentional win, exercise, reflection, focused work, your brain rides that sense of completion into the rest of the day. This is why billionaire mornings are full of keystone habits. Not many, just one or two. Habits that ripple outward and create momentum. It's not about doing more. It's about doing first. Ancient wisdom meets modern wealth. If you strip away the smartphones, the boardrooms, the private jets, and the stock tickers, you'll see something surprising. The billionaire morning routine is not new. It's ancient. The habits of the world's wealthiest today echo principles taught by philosophers, sages, and thinkers thousands of years ago. The wisdom that guided emperors, monks, and scholars is the same wisdom shaping CEOs, entrepreneurs, and visionaries. Because the truth is this: wealth is not just financial. It's mental. It's spiritual. It's the wealth of clarity, of discipline, of perspective. And mornings, quiet, undisturbed, unclaimed, have always been the forge of those riches. The Stoics and the dawn. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher king of Rome, woke every morning to a burden few of us can imagine: ruling an empire at war. Yet in his meditations, he often wrote about mornings. He reminded himself, "At dawn, when you have trouble getting out of bed, tell yourself, I am rising to do the work of a human being." Notice what's happening here. Marcus wasn't hyping himself up with motivational quotes. He was using mornings as a time to re-anchor identity. He knew the day would test him with chaos, but the first act of the morning was not reaction. It was self-definition. This mirrors billionaire mornings. Before Warren Buffett checks markets, before Elon Musk faces engineering fires, before Oprah takes on media empires, they define themselves. They ground identity before they face the world. The Stoics understood what modern psychology confirms. Mornings are not for performance, but for preparation. Not for the world's noise, but for inner alignment. The Eastern traditions of dawn. Travel east, and you'll see the same truth. For centuries, monks in Zen Buddhism rose before sunrise to meditate. They called the pre-dawn hour Brahma Muhurta, the time of the Creator. It was believed to be the most sacred period for stillness, reflection, and prayer. Why? Because in that quiet space before the world awakens, the mind is most receptive, most open, most free of distraction. Modern billionaires unknowingly echo this. Ray Dalio, the hedge fund titan behind Bridgewater Associates, has openly credited meditation as a cornerstone of his success. He doesn't just practice it in the morning as a relaxation technique. He uses it as a way to access clarity, to connect with what he calls the timeless universal principles. What the monks called satori, sudden insight, Dalio calls idea meritocracy. Different words, same truth. Mornings are when the veil is thinnest, when clarity is sharpest. Napoleon Hill and the morning mind. Jump forward to the 20th century. Napoleon Hill, author of Think and Grow Rich, studied the wealthiest men of his time, Andrew Carnegie, Henry Ford, Thomas Edison. And though he never branded it a morning routine, his philosophy points straight at it. Hill wrote, "You have absolute control only over one thing, and that is your thoughts." This is the most significant and inspiring of all facts known to man. When do you control those thoughts most? At dawn, before the demands of life sweep them away. Hill preached autosuggestion, the practice of deliberately feeding your subconscious with affirmations, visions, and goals. Today, neuroscientists would call it priming, but Hill understood the timing. Do it when the mind is most open. The morning. It's no coincidence that countless entrepreneurs, from Steve Jobs to Sarah Blakely, have confessed to starting mornings with intention setting. They may not call it auto-suggestion, but that's what it is. Billionaires speak their day into existence before the world speaks into them. Earl Nightingale and the first hour. Earl Nightingale, often called the Dean of Personal Development, said something profound. Never give up the first hour of the day to the world. It belongs to you. He knew what psychologists would later prove, that the first hour is the rudder of the day. Where it points, the rest of your time follows. This is why Nightingale emphasized feeding your mind with great ideas early. He believed you should treat mornings like training the subconscious. Read philosophy. Listen to something uplifting. Write down goals. It's the same principle guiding billionaires today. They may not broadcast it, but many of them guard the first hour with a ferocity most people can't imagine. They don't attend meetings. They don't pick up calls. They don't rush. They protect that hour like a king protects his crown. Story arc. The Rockefeller morning. Let's step back in history. John D. Rockefeller, the oil magnate who became the richest man of his era, had a morning habit that confused people. He wasn't known for rushing. He was known for sitting silently, rocking in his chair, sometimes for hours. People thought he was wasting time. But Rockefeller wasn't idle. He was thinking, strategizing. That quiet reflection, done in the morning, was his edge. While others scrambled reactively, Rockefeller was plotting decades ahead. His billions were not built in frantic action, but in deliberate clarity. This is the unseen power of the morning routine. It doesn't just prepare you for the day. Sharpens you for life. Philosophy of stillness. The Greeks called it ataraxia, a state of unshakable calm. The Stoics sought it. The Buddhists pursued it. And billionaires, in their own way, guard it each morning. Why? Because clarity is the ultimate currency. Decisions are made not in noise, but in stillness. Fortune follows focus. Seneca wrote, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it." He might as well have been describing the modern habit of wasting mornings. And here's the brutal truth. If you waste your morning, you waste your potential. Modern neuroscience confirms the ancients. What's fascinating is how modern science validates this ancient wisdom. Meditation, which monks practiced at dawn, is now shown through fMRI scans to thicken the prefrontal cortex, enhance emotional regulation, and improve focus. Journaling, which Marcus Aurelius did in his meditations, is now shown to reduce stress, improve problem-solving, and reinforce identity. Morning sunlight exposure, once prescribed by Ayurvedic texts, is now proven to regulate melatonin, balance circadian rhythms, and prevent depression. The ancients didn't have brain scans, but they had observation. They noticed what worked. And billionaires today, knowingly or unknowingly, are heirs to that wisdom. Story arc: the unseen ritual of a modern billionaire. Let me share a more recent example. A well-known tech billionaire, who prefers to stay private, once told an interviewer that every morning, before he opens his laptop, he writes a single sentence in his notebook. What is the highest leverage action I can take today? That's it. One sentence. It's a practice that would make Marcus Aurelius nod, that would resonate with Benjamin Franklin, that Napoleon Hill would call autosuggestion, that Earl Nightingale would applaud. Because that single act filters his attention. It cuts through noise. It ensures that the first neural grooves he lays in the snow of his brain are grooves of focus, not distraction. And that, more than any tactic or checklist, is the essence of a billionaire morning. Bridging ancient and modern. So here's the connection. Marcus Aurelius used dawn to anchor identity. Zen monks used dawn to still the mind. Napoleon Hill used mornings to feed the subconscious. Earl Nightingale used the first hour to set direction. Rockefeller used mornings for quiet thought. And today's billionaires do the same. They aren't copying a trend. They're living an ancient truth. That mornings are the most sacred ground of success. Not for productivity, not for vanity, but for clarity, for identity, for focus. The ancients called it philosophy. Billionaires call it routine. Neuroscientists call it priming. But the label doesn't matter. The principle is eternal. If you win the morning, you win the day. And if you win enough mornings, you win a life. Hidden habits billionaires don't brag about. Scroll through social media, and you'll see morning routines packaged like luxury products. Cold plunges, sunrise yoga on a balcony, green smoothies in crystal glasses. It all looks impressive, but here's the truth. Most billionaires aren't doing any of that. Their mornings are not curated for Instagram. They're private, functional, often boring. And yet, these simple hidden habits carry extraordinary power. Because billionaires don't need their mornings to look successful. They need them to work. The power of solitude. One of the least glamorous, most overlooked billionaire habits is solitude. Not meditation apps. Not podcasts. Just silence. Warren Buffett once said, "I insist on a lot of time being spent, almost every day, to just sit and think." That is very uncommon in American business. This isn't an occasional luxury. For Buffett, solitude is a daily ritual. While the rest of the world floods their mornings with noise, news, notifications, chatter, Buffett leans into quiet. Why? Because solitude is the soil of original thought. In silence, the brain shifts into a mode neuroscientists call the default network, a state where creativity, problem-solving, and long-term vision come alive. Most people avoid silence because it feels empty. Billionaires embrace it because it feels fertile. Bill Gates and the Think Week. Bill Gates is famous for his Think Week, where he disappears for days with nothing but books and notebooks. But here's what most people miss. That practice began in miniature with his mornings. Even during Microsoft's chaotic rise, Gates carved out time in the early hours for uninterrupted reading and reflection. He wasn't chasing inbox zero. He was feeding his mind. Decades later, when asked about his success, Gates pointed back not to hustle, but to thought. Reading is still the main way that I both learn new things and test my understanding. The hidden habit. Solitude plus learning. Gates didn't brag about it. He practiced it. Emotional calibration. Another hidden habit is what psychologists call emotional calibration, deliberately setting your emotional tone for the day. Here's the reality. Money doesn't insulate you from stress. If anything, it multiplies pressure. Billionaires face lawsuits, hostile media, massive responsibilities. But they don't let that chaos decide their mornings. Oprah Winfrey meditates. Ray Dalio journals. Richard Branson exercises outdoors on his private island. Different methods, same principle. Regulate emotions before the world shakes them. Think of it like tuning a guitar. If the strings are off, the music is noise. If your emotions are off, your decisions are distorted. Billionaires tune themselves in the morning so their leadership rings true throughout the day. Elon Musk's unseen routine. Elon Musk is known for chaos, rockets exploding, Tesla deadlines, social media storms. But buried in interviews is a detail few notice. Musk avoids phone calls and meetings in the first hours of the day. Instead, he spends mornings on what he calls critical work, the most important engineering or design problems. It's not glamorous. It's not a cold plunge or a podcast interview. It's solitude plus focus. He knows mornings are his sharpest hours, and he guards them for deep work, not distractions. The hidden lesson? The billionaire morning is not about aesthetics. It's about priorities. The ritual of writing. Another hidden habit is writing. Not blogging, not tweeting, private writing. Marcus Aurelius did it in his meditations. Benjamin Franklin did it with his daily planner. Today, billionaires quietly carry on the tradition. Writing is thinking made visible. It clears fog. It sharpens intention. It externalizes chaos into order. Richard Branson once said, "My most essential possession is a standard-sized school notebook. I write down all kinds of thoughts, all kinds of things that need doing." Notice the humility. Not a $10,000 planner. A school notebook. The power isn't in the tool. It's in the ritual. Energy before efficiency. Most people stumble into mornings chasing efficiency. Clear emails, finish chores, knock out to-dos. Billionaires do the opposite. They chase energy first, then efficiency. This explains why many start with exercise, sunlight, or breathwork. Not because they're fitness fanatics, but because they know a fatigued body cannot power a sharp mind. Science confirms it. Exercise in the morning releases brain-derived neurotrophic factor, BDNF, sometimes called miracle grow for the brain. It boosts memory, focus, and resilience. So when Richard Branson kitesurfs at dawn or Tim Cook hits the gym at 5 a.m., it's not a flex. It's energy engineering. They know that mental wealth flows from physical energy. The morning walk of Steve Jobs. Jobs wasn't known for workouts, but he had a ritual of walking meetings, and it started in the mornings. He'd often take his first hours to walk, alone or with a colleague, discussing ideas. These walks weren't exercise for fitness. They were exercise for clarity. Movement fuels thought. Jobs understood what Aristotle taught centuries before. It is in walking that the mind works. The hidden habit here isn't exercise itself. It's movement as a vehicle for thinking. And it shows us that the billionaire morning doesn't need to be a checklist. It can be as simple as a walk, if the walk is intentional. The unspoken discipline. Saying no. Perhaps the most hidden billionaire habit is not what they do, but what they don't. They say no. No to early emails. No to unnecessary meetings. No to giving their first hours to anyone but themselves. This is counterintuitive in a culture that glorifies responsiveness. But billionaires know responsiveness is a trap. Mornings are for vision, not reaction. Peter Drucker, the father of modern management, put it plainly. There is nothing so useless as doing efficiently that which should not be done at all. The billionaire morning is not efficient. It is selective. It filters ruthlessly. and that discipline is invisible to the outside world. The boring truth. So here's the irony. The billionaire morning is often boring. It's solitude, writing, reading, thinking, walking, protecting time. No cameras, no glamour, just consistent, unspoken discipline. And yet, that boring consistency compounds into extraordinary results. Because mornings are not about entertainment. They are about leverage. The people who own billions own their mornings first. Not because they're flashy, but because they're free. Building your own invisible billionaire routine. By now you've seen it. The billionaire morning isn't glamorous. It isn't curated for Instagram. It's invisible. It's quiet. It's built not for appearance but for impact. And this is the moment where the question turns inward. What about you? You may not run a multinational company. You may not have the luxury of a private island or a personal chef. But the principles that shape a billionaire's morning are not tied to wealth. They're tied to choice. And choice is free. Step 1. Guard the first hour. Think of your morning as prime real estate. The first hour is the most valuable land you own. Don't rent it out to other people's priorities. Emails, texts, breaking news, they all demand your attention. But billionaires don't sell their first hour cheap. Neither should you. Robin Sharma, author of the 5 a.m. Club, says it plainly: own your morning. Elevate your life. This doesn't mean you have to wake up at 5 a.m. It means whenever you wake up, the first 60 minutes belong to you. Protect them like treasure. Step 2. Design for energy. Remember, billionaires don't chase efficiency first. They chase energy. You should too. That could mean a 20-minute workout, a brisk walk, 10 minutes of breath work, or even stretching in silence while the sun rises. Science is on your side. Morning movement boosts dopamine, serotonin, and BDNF, the neurochemicals of focus, learning, and motivation. The principle is simple. Energize before you optimize. Maya's shift. Take Maya, a young entrepreneur from Chicago. For years, she rolled out of bed straight into email, chasing efficiency. By noon, she was drained, frustrated, and reactive. Then she tried something different. She started with 15 minutes of exercise. Then journaling. No phone until 9 a.m. Within weeks, her stress dropped. Her creativity surged. She closed her first six-figure deal not because she worked longer, but because she started stronger. Maya didn't copy a billionaire routine. She built her own. That's the secret. Step 3. Write, don't scroll. The billionaire habit of writing is within everyone's reach. You don't need fancy journals. A cheap notebook is enough. Each morning, write 3 things. Gratitude, one thing you're thankful for. Intention, one thing you will focus on. Reflection, one thought or idea on your mind. This practice takes 5 minutes, but it rewires your brain. Psychologists call it cognitive priming. By writing, you shift your attention away from distraction and toward purpose. Remember Marcus Aurelius, scribbling private notes to himself, never intended for anyone to read. That's the point. The act of writing is for you, not for others. Step 4. Claim solitude. This may be the hardest in our hyper-connected world, but it's non-negotiable. Spend at least 10 minutes each morning in silence. No music, no screens, no voices, just you and your thoughts. At first, it may feel uncomfortable. That's okay. Discomfort is the doorway, because beneath the noise is clarity, and clarity compounds. Warren Buffett didn't stumble into wisdom by rushing. He carved silence into his day. You can too. Step 5. Pick one keystone habit. Billionaires don't follow 20-step morning checklists. They rely on keystone habits, the 1 or 2 actions that set off a cascade of benefits. For some, it's reading. For others, exercise. For others, journaling. Ask yourself, what one habit, if I did it daily, would ripple into every area of my life? Then anchor your mornings around that habit. Everything else is optional. The power of one habit. In the 1990s, Charles Duhigg studied habits for his book The Power of Habit. He found that certain habits, keystone habits, trigger wider transformation. For billionaire Charles Schwab, it was daily planning. For Starbucks CEO Howard Schultz, it was morning exercise. For countless others, it was journaling. Each began as one small habit. Over time, it rewired not just mornings, but entire companies. This is where ordinary mornings become extraordinary. Step 6. Say no early. Finally, adopt the hidden billionaire discipline of saying no. Don't check email in the first hour. Don't open social media before you've set your own agenda. Don't give away your prime mental energy to things that don't matter. Your morning is a negotiation. Every yes is also a no. Choose carefully. Remember Drucker's warning. There is nothing so useless as doing efficiently that which should not be done at all. Building your invisible routine. Here's the truth. Your routine doesn't have to look like a billionaire's. It has to feel like yours. The world won't see it. They don't have to. Your results will speak for you. Because mornings are the hidden architecture of your future. Build them wisely, and the day bends in your favor. So tomorrow, don't wake up and reach for your phone. Don't let the world in before you've built your foundation. Take one of these steps. Guard the first hour, move your body, write, sit in silence, or anchor a keystone habit. Start small. Stay consistent. Your morning doesn't have to be glamorous. It just has to be yours. And in time, you'll discover what billionaires already know. The real wealth of the morning isn't money. It's mastery. The billionaire's secret isn't money. It's time. There's a myth we've been sold, that billionaires are different because of their money. That their wealth creates discipline, clarity, or purpose. But that's backward. Money didn't create their routines. Their routines created their money. Because the real currency billionaires spend most wisely is not dollars. It's time. And if you strip away the yachts, the private jets, the stock options, what remains is something they guard with ferocity: their mornings. Time is the equalizer. You and Elon Musk share the same 24 hours. You and Oprah wake up with the same 1,440 minutes in the bank. What separates them is not more hours, but different choices inside those hours. Marcus Aurelius, writing nearly 2,000 years ago, captured it. Do not act as if you had 1,000 years to live. Death hangs over you. While you live, while it is in your power, be good. The Stoics knew it. Billionaires know it. Time is the one resource you cannot manufacture, multiply, or replace. Guard it, and life expands. Waste it, and even fortunes slip through your fingers. The missed morning. Think of Sarah, a young executive in New York. She had everything on paper: a great job, a six-figure salary, an apartment overlooking the city. But she was always behind. Meetings rushed her. Emails drowned her. She lived in reaction. Until one morning, on a trip to Chicago, she woke before dawn. Jet lag. Unable to sleep, she went for a walk, sat with coffee, and journaled for half an hour. That morning felt different. Calm, clear, controlled. She didn't just survive the day, she led it. And she realized her wealth wasn't in the paycheck. It was in the ability to choose how her mornings began. Billionaires bet on tomorrow. Every morning decision is a vote. When Jeff Bezos protects his slow mornings with family before meetings, he's betting on clarity over chaos. When Jack Dorsey takes a 5-mile run at sunrise, he's betting on health over burnout. When Oprah journals gratitude, she's betting on perspective over panic. And here's the secret: every one of those bets is available to you. You don't need $1 billion to buy them. You just need to choose. The neuroscience of time mastery. Neuroscience reveals why mornings matter so much. Your brain, freshly rested, is most plastic in the early hours. This is when the prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for focus, planning, and willpower, is strongest. But the same window is fragile. If you flood it with social media, notifications, and noise, you hand over your sharpest mental state to distraction. Billionaires don't. They leverage this neurological truth. They aim their best brain hours at what matters most. So should you. A morning that changed history. Consider Benjamin Franklin. Not a billionaire, but a man who shaped nations. His mornings followed a simple ritual. He asked himself one question each day at dawn: what good shall I do this day? It was not glamorous. It wasn't for show. But that single habit shaped inventions, diplomacy, and revolutions. Franklin's morning wasn't about money. It was about meaning. And meaning, multiplied over years, is legacy. Seneca, the Roman philosopher, warned, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it." Billionaires are mortal, just like us. Their secret is not cheating death. It's refusing to waste life. Each morning is a reminder. You are alive. You have a chance. You have a choice. And choice, when repeated, becomes destiny. Your billionaire morning. So let's make this practical. Tomorrow morning, when you wake up, before you let the world in, do 3 things. Claim your first hour, even 30 minutes. No screens. Move your body. It doesn't matter how. Walk, stretch, breathe. Write one line. Gratitude, intention, or reflection. That's it. Start there. And understand this. The world won't notice at first. No one will clap when you put down your phone at dawn. No one will celebrate your journal entry. But time will. Results will. Your future will. Because the morning is a quiet revolution. Invisible today. Unstoppable tomorrow. The legacy of time. Picture yourself 10 years from now. Look back. If you let mornings slip away to distraction, you'll see a blur of busyness. A life lived, but not owned. But if you guard your mornings, if you claim your time, you'll see a different story. A story of progress, clarity, and mastery. That's the legacy billionaires are building. Not more money, but more life inside the hours they have. And you can too. So tonight, set your alarm not for an earlier hour, but for a wiser morning. Decide now. Tomorrow begins with you, not with the world. Because the billionaire's secret isn't wealth. It isn't power. It isn't even luck. It's time. And the greatest fortune you'll ever hold is not in your bank account. It's in your mornings. Guard them. Shape them. Live them. And you'll find that what billionaires know, you now know too. The invisible hours of the morning are where the visible victories of life are born. If you like this video, thumbs up and share with your friends. Don't forget to subscribe to the Wisdom Foundry channel.